Welcome back to today's Explainer. We've got a massive lineup of global shifts from June 27, 2026 to break down for you. Honestly, there is just a lot happening around the world right now, from intense geopolitical clashes to staggering natural disasters, so we're going to jump right in, unpack exactly what's going on, and figure out why it all actually matters to you.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at global security and conflict, the Venezuelan humanitarian emergency, historic European heat waves, U.S. politics and justice, and finally, some global culture and sports. Let's get into it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, Global Security and Conflict, where we're seeing some incredibly high stakes in the Middle East and Europe right now.
We are literally watching a rapid cause and effect of regional spillover play out in real time. It really just shows you how fast a fragile interim ceasefire can completely fall apart. So the whole sequence kicks off when a commercial container ship, the QQ, which was actually bypassing Iran's sanctioned shipping lanes, gets hit by a drone attack. In direct response to that, the U.S. military launches these highly targeted airstrikes, hitting Iranian drone and missile depots, plus some coastal radar installations. But man, the ripple effects were immediate. Almost right away, Bahrain and Kuwait both reported being targeted by Iranian paramilitary drone salvos. We even saw Kuwaiti air defenses having to step in and intercept incoming missiles dangerously close to a major U.S. Army base. And to cap it off, Iran's Revolutionary Guard announced they were targeting what they called the U.S. terrorist army. It's basically a textbook example of how a localized incident can instantly escalate and threaten wider global stability.
And the immediate human and economic impact of all this? It's staggering. We're talking about 2,500 seafarers across 115 different vessels who are right now facing emergency evacuation protocols. Because of this military exchange, the Joint Maritime Information Center had to escalate the regional maritime security level in the Strait of Hormuz, citing a substantial and immediate risk to commercial shipping. To put that into perspective, this isn't just a military issue. It's a massive logistical and safety crisis on one of the absolute most vital economic waterways on the planet, which directly impacts our global supply chains.
Shifting our focus over to Eastern Europe, the scale of military disruption there just continues to grow. Actually, occupation authorities in Crimea have literally just declared a state of emergency. This comes after weeks, and I mean weeks, of a persistent punishing Ukrainian drone and missile campaign. These strikes have severely compromised essential everyday utilities. We're talking massive disruptions to water, fuel, and electrical infrastructure all across the occupied peninsula. This level of disruption is rattling everyday life in Crimea to an extent we honestly haven't seen since Russia's illegal annexation way back in 2014.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the Venezuelan humanitarian emergency. We're looking at the grim aftermath of back-to-back earthquakes.
51,000. I really want you to let that number sink in. While the confirmed death toll following those massive 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude earthquakes has climbed sharply past 1,420, that 51,000 figure, that represents the people who local officials say remain entirely unaccounted for. We're talking about tens of thousands of individuals who are currently missing or believed to be buried beneath the rubble. It's just an emergency of an almost unfathomable scale.
Now, what's incredibly striking here is the startling contrast between official reports and what's actually happening on the ground. So, faced with some intense criticism over a sluggish rollout, the Venezuelan government claims they've dispatched over 100 heavy machinery units to clear collapsed buildings. But if you talk to witnesses in the hardest-hit areas, especially in places like La Guaira, they tell a completely different story. The grim reality for rescue ops right now is that ordinary citizens, side by side with roughly 860 international volunteers, are still out there frantically digging through the wreckage, and a lot of the time they're relying on nothing more than simple hand tools to try and reach survivors.
And honestly, as if the earthquakes weren't devastating enough, humanitarian aid networks are now sounding the alarm about a looming secondary disaster. Right now, you've got displaced survivors whose homes are either totally destroyed or structurally compromised, and they are terrified to go indoors. Instead, thousands of families are being forced to camp out in open-air plazas and public parks. But here's the kicker. Heavy rains are forecasted. These incoming storms seriously threaten to trigger severe mudslides, which directly endangers those highly vulnerable outdoor encampments. It's a real race against the clock.
Transitioning to Section 3, historic European heat waves, where we're seeing temperature records totally smashed across the continent.
The geographic spread of this crisis is totally unprecedented, really highlighting a planetary climate extreme that is affecting millions right now. Get this, the German Weather Service just logged an all-time June record temperature of 41.3 degrees Celsius, that's 106.3 degrees Fahrenheit. The UK similarly sweated through its hottest June day in history at 37.3 degrees Celsius in Suffolk. And looking ahead, it doesn't get much better. Poland's Institute of Meteorology and Water Management has triggered a level 3 emergency warning, which is their absolute highest alert. Meteorological data shows localized peaks there are going to top 42 degrees Celsius on Sunday. This immediate, literally life-threatening heat has Polish city officials scrambling to rapidly organize public water distribution and emergency cooling centers just to keep people safe.
Let's bring it back stateside for Section 4, U.S. Politics and Justice. We've got nominations, stalled legislation, and some high-profile arrests.
We're tracking developments across 3 completely different arenas of U.S. government action today. First up, the White House announced that President Trump has nominated Lance Schroyer, he's a former Oklahoma State trooper, to step in as the permanent Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This fills a pretty critical law enforcement vacancy left by the high-profile resignation of Todd Lyons back in May. Meanwhile, over on Capitol Hill, a major, highly anticipated bipartisan housing package, which was aimed at boosting construction and lowering costs, has completely stalled out. President Trump signaled he wouldn't sign it, a move that proponents, like Senator Tina Smith, are calling a massive setback for affordable housing reform. Finally, in what's a pretty huge international justice victory, federal prosecutors confirmed the arrest of Abdikerm Abdullahi Aidla over in Mogadishu, Somalia. After dodging law enforcement for over 4 years, this key suspect in the massive $250 million pandemic-era Feeding Our Future fraud scam is finally expected to be extradited to Minnesota to face federal charges.
Sticking with the realm of justice, today brought an absolutely unprecedented legal development in Washington. Former high-ranking National Security Advisor John Bolton has officially entered a guilty plea for unlawfully retaining classified information. This plea effectively wraps up an intensive, multi-year federal investigation into the mishandling of sensitive government archives. It's for sure a moment that closes a major chapter in U.S. legal and political history.
Finishing up with Section 5, Global Culture and Sports, looking at World Cup records in a moment of interconnected healing.
So, the FIFA World Cup 2026 has just wrapped up its intense group stages to set the definitive field for the round of 32. And wow, the historic 48-team tournament structure has completely changed the game. It turns out expanding the roster of teams actually correlated to a nearly 0.5% spike in goals per game compared to 2022, pushing the average all the way up to 2.95. Sports analysts are pointing out that this thrilling dynamic is pretty much entirely fueled by underdogs defying those steep rank gaps in the group stages, which is giving us a way more offensive, high-scoring tournament overall. It's just a fantastic reminder of how a few structural changes can completely rewrite the viewing experience for the fans.
We're going to close out today's explainer with a really beautiful moment of reflection. Ahead of the upcoming U.S. 250th anniversary, the principal chief of the United Homa Nation, Laura Ann Chason, invited communities across the entire country to participate in a profound nationwide day of prayer and reflection. This global call focuses heavily on interfaith healing, honoring the immense resilience of Native ancestors over centuries of colonization, and collectively praying for future generations. It's a really powerful reminder of human endurance and our interconnectedness.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer. We've definitely covered a lot of ground today, from volatile military shifts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, to the heartbreaking humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, extreme European heat waves, some major political shifts in the U.S., and finally, those moments of athletic and cultural resilience. So as you process these heavy global shifts alongside these incredible moments of human connection, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. From global conflicts to shifting climates, which of today's headlines will ultimately define our tomorrow? Keep asking questions, keep seeking to understand, and I'll catch you in the next one.